everybody, and welcome to Camilla's Corner, the podcast that now is officially up and running because last week we released the first episode to Camilla's Corner, and oh my gosh, the support that I got from that episode was crazy. It was so lovely. Just people from everywhere in my life listening to that episode, supporting me. I was overwhelmed with how much love it got. I was so excited, and I'm so glad to have like a foundation, because now that that first one's up, it's up and running. I've got to keep going. I've got to commit. There's no backing out now. So I'm just really excited to like actually have it up on its feet and have it as an official podcast. Speaking of my incredible podcast art, I did not mention it last episode. Can we all give some love to the podcast art designed and drawn and illustrated by my wonderful friend Izzy? You can follow her at izzy.shep.444 on Instagram. Also follow her photography account, which is isa, like Izza, .shoots.film. Follow both of those accounts because I'm obsessed with the podcast art. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out what it was going to be, because I didn't know at first if I wanted it to be a cartoon or if I wanted it to be like a picture of me or something like that. I drew a lot of inspiration from some of the podcasts I listened to with the cartoon, and I'm just obsessed. And so I came up with like the pitch of, if you follow my Instagram, my podcast Instagram at Camilla's Corner on Instagram, you'll see that it started off with like the roughest sketch of a stick figure in a corner with squiggles as the title. And then that eventually turned into the color palette being put together, and then like how I'm sitting in the picture, and it all just got put together. And I just got really excited when I saw it for the first time. I hope you like it too, because I love it. I love it, love it. So thank you, Izzy, for doing that. Everyone send her some love over on the Instagrams, because it's next level amazing. But yeah, the reason I didn't upload that in the first episode was because I recorded that first episode 2 weeks before, I think even like 3 weeks before it got uploaded, just because of all the technical things with the podcast art and everything, and also with just me figuring out how to upload it. So a lot has happened since I've uploaded that first episode, and a lot of personal reflection has come into play since personally listening to that episode, because it's really trippy to listen to yourself back, especially when you're speaking. I'm very used to hearing myself singing, hearing myself like recorded singing and doing things like that. But speaking, not so much. So it was shocking how much I picked up on my own voice and what I say a lot. And I edit these audios so they flow a bit better. But the amount of times that I say the phrase, but like, shocking. I was shocked. I will probably say it 1,000,000 times again in this episode. However, I'm very grateful that I have this opportunity to hear myself back, because then I go into my real life and I pick up when I start speaking strange, or like I start repeating my words. So anyway, a lot has happened since I recorded that episode. I recorded that back in, I don't even have a concept of time. I think like start of April. And it is now nearly the end of April, which is insane. Yeah, a lot has happened. So after I recorded that episode, I went back to Sydney for a week after being in Melbourne for like 3 months. And it was so good. The amount that I needed to be back was insane. The second I got off the plane, I saw my family. I was like, "Ugh! My soul has been nourished. I am back." It was just so nice. And then with my clothes, oh my gosh, I left a lot of clothes up in Sydney. And I opened my closet and I forgot how good my clothes are back in Sydney. So I like took some of them with me, of course. But I was like, I found pants that I was like, oh, I love them. And I got to catch up with some of my friends that I haven't seen in too long. I got to catch up with my friends from high school. I went to 2 different high schools and I caught up with friends from both of my high schools. It was so good to like catch up, to see how everyone's going, especially because a lot of my friends are now in uni. So it was really fun to hear about their uni life, which was really interesting because I don't have to go to the library to study and I don't have to go to lecture halls for lessons. So it was just fun to hear from my friends how they're going in uni with all that compared to how I'm doing. I also caught up with like some of my theater friends, and then I caught up with the amazing girls from choir. I used to be in choir, and just, oh my gosh, I got to watch one of their little performances, and I actually did cry. I don't know why I'm gonna say could have. I did cry because, oh my gosh, to see them all singing and just having the best time ever, and to be reunited with my friends from last year from choir, my soul was like rejuvenated. I was so happy. But obviously I was very sad to be leaving Sydney, but I had to come back to Melbourne. So got to come back, had the best time ever. I love Sydney so much. And the thing with Sydney that I loved that I didn't even think that I would notice is the weather. Oh my gosh. I loved how consistent the weather is in Sydney. If you don't know, Melbourne is said to have like 4 seasons in a day. And that is the truth. I thought people were exaggerating. They are not. That is the truth. It can be so cold one day in Melbourne in the morning, and then you go out in the afternoon and it's the hottest day. And you're just like, what? How did this happen? Someone make it make sense, because I do not want to carry around all these layers when it's going to be like 25, 30 degrees, but it's like 10 in the morning. So it was so nice to go back to Sydney and it to be sunny the whole day. I had the best time in Sydney, and I got back to Melbourne on the Friday night, and I got back Friday night to Melbourne. Yeah, I just got back to my little apartment, just me and myself. Me, myself, and I back in my little apartment, and I was like, oh, kind of bittersweet. But I do plan to go back to Sydney very soon because, oh, I love it so much. Then a whole another week passed, and then this was the week. So yeah, the week I was in Sydney was the week I posted my podcast, the news that I was releasing the podcast on social media and to all my friends. And it was crazy, all of everyone's excitement around it. I was so excited because everyone was so excited. And like I said, it was crazy to see how people from all different areas of my life were getting ready to hear this podcast, which was really sweet. It was really nice. And it's really nice to know that, like, I've got people from all these different areas that care about what I have to say. It was really, really nice to hear about that. 222. On the 22nd of April, get out of town. Angel numbers pulling through. That was so exciting. Anyway, I am just very glad that people got excited to listen to the podcast. I had people asking me everywhere, and they were like, we're so excited to hear it. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. It was so good. But I was worried because, yeah, like I said, I recorded that episode a few weeks before I got down to Sydney and before I announced that I was even releasing a podcast. So I was just pretty nervous as to what would happen. I was planning on re-recording it, but I just decided not to. I just added like at the end of the last one to like follow the Instagram, and that's all I did really. Other than like releasing the podcast, I've done a lot of stuff this week. My like goal for this week was to find a job because I need a job down here in Melbourne. So I've been like searching around, and luckily I've been searching like hectically, and there were moments of like real stress around it. But luckily, thankfully, with my manifestation skills, that I've gotten a few responses from places, a few like confirmed things, a few confirmed jobs. So I'm just really glad that I can finally start working down here in Melbourne because I need money, girl. So I'm just really glad that I can start working soon because I've got things to pay for. And having a job is something that I actually really enjoy. I really enjoy having a job, having a place to work. And not having it for this long has been not great for me. So doing a lot of work to like clear my mindset about money and finance and getting a job because it's very difficult and it's something that I struggle with a lot. But I think I'm finally starting to clear that mindset of like money and lack, which is so great. There had been a lot of stress up until this point. There was a lot of work that needed to be done. And luckily, I've got great tools to help me with that. So I can maybe talk about that one day, but I'm just focusing on getting stuff done and doing things, which is great. But yeah, I've been mostly chilling around in Melbourne. I've had one of my friend's birthdays was yesterday. Had a great time. And this was one of my musical theatre friends. And, a musical theatre kids at a party hit different. They hit different. I'm sorry. If you've got multiple musical theatre kids that are not afraid to put on some show tunes and just like perform like their life depends on it, like, what are you even doing? What are you even doing? Because me and my friend, we were just singing out When He Sees Me from Waitress, acting it all out, and it was so much fun. It was so much fun, and I loved it so much, and it was just a blast. I loved it. So that's kind of what happened to me during these past 2 weeks that I've been around. And now to like the main topic of discussion, which a few people asked me about on Instagram. And it's basically just me talking about my process of coming down here to Melbourne to study, what it was like. I'm going to do a whole episode on musical theatre, like my journey with musical theatre next week, because that's just a whole nother beast to tackle. But I wanted to get started on like how I decided to come down to Melbourne, what I did, because a lot came into my mind and I had to think about a lot of things to make the decision to come down here and study full time, which is a really big decision to make, especially for me, it was huge. So let's start at the very beginning. I knew since probably like year 7, 8, I knew that I wanted to study musical theatre. I've known for a very long time that this is like all I've wanted to do. And I actually only started researching schools, I started researching very early because I knew what I wanted to do very, very early. And a lot of people don't get that, which I'm so glad that I knew what I wanted a long time before. I basically started researching schools in Australia that offered musical theatre in year 9. This was only like, I only had a couple options and I didn't really know them too well. I knew about some of the big schools like NIDA, and a couple little schools in like New South Wales that I wasn't too keen on, but like they were the only ones I knew, so I was like, okay, this is an option. And this is kind of what I'm working towards. Fast forward to year 12, my knowledge of schools is a lot bigger. I've got like a big document with like every school that offers musical theatre in Australia. And my plan is to apply to as many as possible. This kind of changed around halfway through the year when I started to really only apply to the ones that I wanted to go to, because it wasn't really worth me applying to ones that I knew that I wasn't going to go to if I got. So I got accepted into the school I'm at now, down here in Melbourne, around July of 2022, which was, I was in year 12. So that was like a solid option. And I applied to other schools, but I always had this one. And I got pretty far with the other schools. I got into like second callbacks and stuff, but I didn't get into the other schools that I wanted. So I didn't get into those schools, but I still had this one school. And I was left with two options basically, which was go to this school that I'm at right now, that I've gotten into, spend a year training, but I would have to live in Melbourne by myself, and I wouldn't be at home, which was a pretty big deal. I really wanted to be at home for at least this first year out of school. And obviously home is where everyone I know is, where I had work, where I had opportunities to work. Just, it was the most comfortable place for me. And then my other option was to not go to uni for this year, take like a gap year, working, traveling, doing whatever, maybe doing some small, shorter courses. And eventually, like with the help of my family, we decided that I would move down to Melbourne and go to uni. Just because it was better for me to spend the year training and to spend it learning and developing my skills so that I can keep applying to these other schools that I want to get into, like my dream schools, and so I feel more confident moving forward. But it was also a place where if I didn't get into those schools, I could continue studying at this school, and the school that I'm at has a pretty great reputation of getting people on stage, basically. That was a really difficult decision to make because obviously, like I said, I really wanted to stay in Sydney, stay at home with my family, because I was very lucky in having a great family and a great home that I really wanted to stay in. Yeah, moving to Melbourne was not my number one choice. Saying that, it was the option that we decided to take just because we thought it was going to be the best for what I wanted to do. It was very hectic because in January I was overseas, and in the meantime I was trying to find a house to live in and a place to stay and what I was going to do, like plane tickets, whatever, all the thing. I knew though that one of my friends was moving down here. She was also studying here in Melbourne. We're not studying together, but she was moving down at the start of the year to get herself settled. And I was like, okay, I've got one person that I know in Melbourne, and that is good for me because at least I have someone if I need to talk to about anything. There is someone here that I know and I'm familiar with. And luckily, like, she's one of my best friends. So that was really great for me. End of January came and my school started on the 30th of January. But since I was overseas, I had to come down and start on the 6th of February, which was very stress-inducing because it means that I would start a week later to the rest of my peers, which was very stressful. It turned out to be completely fine, but yeah. I had like a week in Sydney before I had to move down to Melbourne, and in that week, I managed to find the apartment that I'm living at and apply to, and I got it. And I also got my plane tickets with a plan to stay with my friend for 2 nights and then move into my apartment. So the move down to Melbourne was very, like the physical move, the physical journey was very fast paced. I got down to Sydney. 5 days later, I was on a plane to Melbourne and I was here, which was a lot. It was very much a lot. I was with my friend for 2 nights, and then I moved into my apartment, which was very bare. I didn't have any stuff with me because I only had like my suitcase full of stuff, mostly just like stuff for school because I started school the day after I got to Melbourne. I was able to get myself set up and it was all good. And my mum came down the weekend after and she helped me. We went to IKEA and we bought a bunch of things just to make my like place seem more like home, which was very nice. And I've kind of set myself up from there. That was kind of like the story of like how I got here and why I decided to come down here. But since being here, there's a lot that I really like about Melbourne and like that I'm really glad that I'm here for, especially like the art scene, the culture scene is a lot more diverse than in Sydney. Like I love Sydney theatre and I love seeing what's up in like the art scene, what's happening. But Melbourne just has a lot more. It has heaps of theatres and it has street art everywhere. No, but I'm in an area that has a lot of stuff around me. I think that Melbourne is kind of the arts capital of Australia. That's my hot take. It's not even that hot of a take, it's kind of the truth. There is a really great pool of resources to grab onto here in Melbourne for someone who's studying musical theatre, which is really great. It's really, really great. Yeah, it's been pretty hectic. I'm so glad that my friend is here. We were saying before we both came down to Melbourne, like last year, we were both like, oh, yeah, we should catch up every like month or every like other week because like we'll both be busy with our stuff. But no, we've like clinged on to each other and we like see each other like twice a week if we can because we're each other's support system here because we're the only ones from Sydney that we have. But I am making my own friends here in Melbourne, which is so great. I haven't been able to explore as much as I want to, especially because I don't have my car down here, but what I do have around me is really nice. I'm in a very kind of central area of Melbourne, which means that I get to, like, I've got amazing stores around me. I've got thrift stores everywhere around me, which is so good. And the thrifting down here in Melbourne, all of my Sydney friends listening to this, if you come down to Melbourne, we are going thrifting together because, oh my gosh, the thrift game down here is so strong because everyone has great fashion sense in Melbourne. It's really great. You just look around and there's all these pretty people and you're just like, wow, you are great. You are slaying. But that's kind of been the Melbourne journey so far. I have to say that I am scared for winter down here in Melbourne because we've had some pretty cold days already and it is middle of autumn. So I'm not really a fan of the cold. I'm much more of a summer gal. Hopefully I can get through it. I'm just kind of scared with like it getting dark in the morning and dark in the afternoon really early. I'm also scared with like clouds, like cloudiness. I'm someone who is I get like seasonal depression pretty easily. Like if it's a cloudy day, I'm just like not feeling it. It's a good day if the sun is out for me. For others, I can't say, but for me, I love the sun and I love summer and all that. So I'm just kind of wary that it's not going to be like that in winter. So I'm a little scared for that. I've enjoyed my time down here in Melbourne because it's just a lot of fun. It's crazy to think that I'm in a completely different city to where I've grown up most of my life. It's sometimes like pinch me moments where I'm like, I'm an adult and I'm living by myself in a completely different city. And like I live an hour and a half plane trip away from home. That's a lot. That's crazy. It's a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun sometimes. And yeah. So that's kind of my whole spiel on Melbourne life, how I decided to come down here, all of the things, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Next week, I am going to talk about musical theatre and my journey with musical theatre. And I need to hold myself up to that because I will probably not remember. If you've got any questions, give me a message up on Camilla's Corner on Instagram because I am very happy to discuss all things Melbourne living. And of course, I've only lived here for like 3 months. I've not been here for long and there's still so much time left. And if anything happens, I will update because a lot can happen in a week. So definitely make sure to keep following for all the updates. Thank you so much for listening. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, if you could give this episode a little review or little 5 stars, that would be so nice and that can help spread the podcast to other listeners. If you're listening on YouTube, if you could give this a thumbs up, that would be incredible and I will love you forever. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next week for a delve into musical theatre life. Okay, bye!